Right, let's discuss what happened in the UFC this weekend. So we had UFC Vegas 67, also some big news regarding Cyril Gane, John Jones and Francis Ngannou. So I'm going to be taking a look at everything that's going on with all of that, as well as recapping what was a very entertaining event from the weekend. So let's start off with the recap of UFC Vegas 67. Claudio Ribeiro versus Al Hassan. Now this was an interesting one because I had Claudio Ribeiro in this one. Not that I was acknowledged that Al Hassan was more than capable of getting the knockout in that one because he's a knockout artist, but so is Claudio Ribeiro. And one thing I did notice about that fight was that Ribeiro's corner was awful. Like, absolutely disgracefully bad. The guy walking behind him sounded like a goddamn ambulance. He's walking behind him just going, hey, hey, but just doing it over and over again. What is the matter with you? Is there something wrong? What are you okay? And it was so strange. They were so focused on putting the spotlight on them. It was weird because the woman in his corner as well, it looked like, okay, let's get the spotlight on us by using this fighter to put the spotlight on us. Let's be as crazy and zany as possible. They even forgot to give him his goddamn gum shield. That's some terrible cornering. Like, terrible cornering. And they just had no advice for him in the corner. It was absolutely woeful. Disgraceful. And because of that, look, he got lit up by Al Hassan. Al Hassan looked fantastic. So middleweight division, you've got to think that he's got to be getting some, higher opponents now. So who have we got in middleweight? I mean, we just saw, obviously, Sean Strickland. I'm wondering, Sean Strickland won, so that could be a decent fight. Roman Dolidze is already matched up. Dricus du Plessis versus Razak Al Hassan. Yeah, I'm in. Put that one together. But Claudio Ribeiro, find some different coaches. Go to a different gym. Those guys are clowns. They're ridiculous. Then you had Damon Jackson versus Dan Ige. This was a good one. Like, Jackson, he just struggled with the power of Dan Ige, really. I thought that it would have been better for Jackson if he could have maybe taken it to the ground. I thought that he might have been able to offer. I was interested to see how that one would go on the ground, in all honesty. But fair play to Dan Ige, man. That power is a great equaliser, and it was a lovely walk-off knockout as well. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch that one. It was a very good fight for as long as it lasted. And then the main event, Strickland versus Imavov. Strickland pressured so well. He used the Philly shell defense as well, which is not something that you see very often in MMA. It's that boxing defense where it's like kind of going forwards in a shell. It allows him to kind of throw things out and keep his guard very, very high. Strickland's chin and his guard are usually pretty good. He's able to keep just out of the way of everything. I thought that Imavov needed to keep it at kicking range, really. He failed to do that, and because of that, Strickland was able to stay right in his face for the entire fight. I've seen a lot of people saying that it was a boring fight. It was not a boring fight, not at all. They spent 5 rounds basically punching and kicking each other in the face. Just because there's not a finish doesn't mean it's a boring fight. If it's a boring fight, I will call it out. Thiago Santos versus Ankalaev. That was a boring fight. That was dull as dishcloths, mate. But Strickland versus Imavov, that was a fun fight. It was a fun technical fight. It was good to watch. I understand why people are hating on that. And I thought Strickland looked very good, actually. He looked really good. He looked sharp. And let's not kind of underestimate how good Imavov is. For Strickland to be able to walk Imavov down like that and have that kind of performance, it really speaks to the quality of Strickland's striking. And I would like to see Strickland I'm interested to see if Strickland likes a good quick turnaround. I mean, there's a certain Robert Whittaker who's looking for an opponent for that February Perth card. Saying Strickland versus Whittaker. I would like to see that. It's a big step up for Strickland. Don't get me wrong, huge step up. But, I mean, 7-2. But Whittaker's looking for an opponent. Strickland is a game opponent. It would be a very fun fight, that. Bobby Knuckles against Sean Strickland. Make that one happen in Perth. I would tune in a heartbeat. Quickly before I get into the news, the big news that everybody's seeing, if I could just ask you, if you enjoy this content, could you do me a favour? Just hit subscribe. It really helps out a lot. Thank you. Francis Ngannou has officially been released by the UFC. Before I get into the fight that's been made as a result of that, I just want to discuss that point very quickly. It's a point of some contention for a lot of people. It's very divisive. Some people fall on the side of, oh, Francis Ngannou has stuck it to the man, he's done it his own way, and more people should follow suit. Well, yes and no. He has done it his own way, and he is now a free agent. That's, fair enough. Fair play to him. He's gambling on himself. I don't hate on that at all. However, he has left a lot of money on the table. That cannot be understated. The UFC offered him enough money that it would have made him the highest paid heavyweight of all time. Now, I know that Brock Lesnar was the highest paid heavyweight previous to that, making $2.5 million per fight. Let's be fair, $2.5 million per fight is nothing to be sniffed at, and I know that he did get offered more than that. I heard a rumour that it was $10 million over 3 fights, so you're looking at like $3.3 million a fight, roughly, plus pay-per-view points. That's in addition. So he could have been clearing close to 4 or 5 million per fight, and that's over 3 fights. So he could have cleared 15 million, including pay-per-view points, and that's before any sponsorships, anything like that as well. He would have been a very wealthy man. He left all of that on the table because he's gambling on himself, and he wants to go and try and box. Now, a lot of people are saying that the UFC just refused to pay him. That's not true. And a lot of people, the other side of it is, I've seen a lot of people saying that Francis is just, he's scared of John Jones. That's preposterous. He's not scared of John Jones at all. That's a fight that I was interested to see, because just the size and the power of Ngannou alone would have been a real difference maker. But effectively, Ngannou wanted a clause in his contract, apparently, that would allow him to box. And the UFC are not going to do that. And the reason is that him fighting, the fight he wanted was Tyson Fury. So let's speculate on that for a moment. People are saying, well, the UFC let Conor McGregor go and box Floyd Mayweather. Right. Slightly different, though. There are a couple of things to take into account. Number one, Floyd Mayweather was 40 odd. He's been retired for a while. He's a lot smaller than Conor McGregor. Number two, Conor McGregor at that time had surpassed the UFC. Had surpassed MMA. He'd become a pop culture icon. Francis Ngannou is not a pop culture icon. Outside of MMA, people, for the most part, do not know who he is, with the greatest of respect. I'm not trying to disrespect Francis Ngannou by saying that, but simply put, if you were to take 10 people walking down the street and ask them who Conor McGregor is, at the time when he's vying for that boxing match with Floyd Mayweather, if you were to ask 10 people down the street who Conor McGregor is, they'd say, oh, he's that Irish cage fighting chap, or whatever. 7 out of 10 people would have probably said that. Same question about Francis Ngannou now to 10 random people walking down the street. I think maybe 3 people might know who he is. If you're in America, maybe slightly more, because MMA is slightly bigger in America, but it's still not going to be a very large number of people, because he hasn't transcended the sport into popular culture. So that boxing match with Tyson Fury is not nearly as big as he thinks it is, as the fans that want to see him boxing Tyson Fury and making 60 million, he's not going to make that from a boxing match with Tyson Fury, because that boxing match does not generate enough revenue to justify paying that amount to Tyson Fury. It's just not going to happen. So when people say, oh, well, why won't the UFC, if the UFC let Conor go and box? Why won't they let Ngannou go and box? Simple fact is, there's just not enough money in it for them to make it worthwhile damaging their brand by having their current heavyweight champion get fustigated. Because that's what it would be against Tyson Fury. Make no mistake about it, it would be fustigation. But put fustigation aside, Mo, you've got a choice. Sorry, a little Simpsons reference there for you. Yeah, and it just wouldn't be a big enough revenue generator for the UFC to take the damage on their brand. Whereas with Floyd versus Conor, there was more than enough money to be made that after the UFC have taken their cut, they're like, okay, we've got our cut. This was a profitable move, because at the end of the day, the UFC is looking to make a profitable move, and that's what they're interested in. They're not interested in Ngannou going to boxing to get battered for them to make $1 million, $2 million. It's just not financially viable, and that is why they would not agree to put it into his contract. So let's go back to the boxing for a second. I've seen a lot of people posting about how, now Tyson Fury is a free man, free at last, he's free at last, that he can go and box and make 30 to 60 million. Okay. First of all, I'd just like to ask a question, just a question. Who is paying Francis Ngannou 30 to 60 million to box? Because I think that you're stretching that slightly. This is just a question to those people that think that. I'll just ask, have a look at the numbers of what even the big box. Look at what Tyson Fury gets paid for his boxing matches with Deontay Wilder. Spoiler alert, it's about 25 million. And then pay-per-view points on top. And that's Tyson Fury. He's the A side. He's the biggest name in heavyweight boxing. That's his ceiling at the moment. So in what universe? I'd just ask, how do you come to the conclusion that Francis Ngannou will be making 30 to 60 million if he boxes Tyson Fury? Which again, I think that's a stretch as to whether that happens at all. And I would also ask that if it's not Tyson Fury, in order for him to box Tyson Fury, it would be a farce, it'd be an exhibition. I don't think it would make as much money as people think it would. I think that in total, maybe Ngannou could walk away with a couple of million, it wouldn't be any more than that. I don't think he would walk away from a boxing match with Tyson Fury with more than the purse that was offered on his new contract in the UFC. I don't see that there's enough revenue to be made from that boxing match to justify a purse any bigger than that. And Tyson Fury's not going to give him a 50-50 split. Tyson Fury, he'd be lucky to get an 80-20 split in favour of Tyson Fury, because Tyson Fury would be like, no, this is my world, I'm the A side, this is what it's going to take. And that's if Tyson Fury ever even entertains that matchup. I know that he had him in the ring when he beat Chisora, I think, or White for the I think it was White for the third time. Either way, he had him in the ring. Tyson Fury's already forgotten about that, mate. You think that you had like a verbal agreement to box Tyson Fury? I don't think that ever happens, because there's no reason for Tyson Fury to do it. It would be easy work, but it just wouldn't even be that big of a payday. The world is not clamouring for that boxing match. They're just not. So then that leaves with another option. If Ngannou really wants to pursue boxing, then he should, try and stamp himself as a boxer. How do you do that? Well, you box a boxer. He's not getting any younger. He really needs to, if he wants to get those big fights, championship fights against your Anthony Joshua's, your Deontay Wilders even, and your Tyson Furies, you're going to have to box somebody in the top 10. And I would ask, who in the top 10 would you actually give him a chance against? Parker? No, too technically good. Dillian White. I think that a boxing match I would like to see, actually. I would like to see Dillian White versus Francis Ngannou. I would actually enjoy seeing that, because Dillian White's maybe number 7 in the world? I don't know off the top of my head. But either way, he's a solid boxer. He's very, very good. Put him in there against Francis Ngannou. I don't think it would be a huge payday for Francis, but it would at least show he has some legitimate intentions on actually boxing, for real. I don't think that goes very well for Francis Ngannou, if I'm totally honest. I think that in a boxing match, Dillian Whyte would absolutely destroy Francis Ngannou, and I think that puts an end to the whole boxing kind of tenure, the idea, the experiment, as it were. And then he probably goes back to MMA. And you're looking at the other organisations. It's like, okay, yeah, he could go to the PFL. Is the PFL gonna, like, the PFL has 1 million as their prize for, like, you know, their heavyweight tournaments. He'd probably win that heavyweight tournament, but the UFC have just offered him 3.3 per fight. So how is that better? I don't understand how that's better. Okay, so bare knuckle boxing are going to make him an offer. Are they going to offer him more than 3.3 million a fight? I don't know, but how do they pay those guys so much? They don't make that much money. It's kind of crazy. Goes to Bellator. He's not making that much in Bellator, and if he is, that's just going to be at the expense of all the other fighters, as I've said. In the Bellator kind of pay structure, it's all at the expense of the fighters at the bottom of the card, from the main event down. But I don't see how in their pay structure, I don't even see how in their revenue, they would be able to pay Francis Ngannou more than 3.3 million a fight. I think that, really, if that is true, that's what the UFC were offering him, and I don't know for sure. This is just from what I've seen, but I would say that this is also from what Francis Ngannou has said. Francis Ngannou said he left tens of $1 millions on the table, so that would stack up, wouldn't it? I don't know. I'm interested to see where Francis Ngannou lands, and I don't think the UFC will miss him that much. He seems like he turned into a bit of a prima donna. Look, he had a very, very hard punch. He was really fun to watch from that respect, but he didn't have the best personality in the world. He started to become quite entitled, and you know, there's only so much you can do with that personality. And I think they hit the ceiling with Francis Ngannou. I don't think he's going to be hugely missed. And this brings me on to what's next, because now they have announced it's going to be Jon Jones versus Ciryl Gane for the heavyweight title. Now that I am interested in. Wowee. Because, look, Jon Jones is not going to be coming in much smaller than Ciryl Gane, if he's smaller at all. Ciryl Gane's not... He's a big dude. He's a big heavyweight, but he's not like a giant heavyweight. You know, Jon Jones is 6'4", and if he's been packing on the pounds like he said that he's been doing, like it looks like he's been doing, he's going to have a real good... He's not going to be outsized. He won't be outmuscled. One thing that he might have a problem with is Ciryl Gane is so good at striking. He is lightning fast. He's so fast that it scares people. It's like when you saw him against Volkov, that was ridiculous what he was able to do to him. So I'm wondering if on the feet Jon Jones is fast enough to really keep up with Ciryl Gane. I would think that maybe we see Jon Jones go back to his wrestling roots, because he's going to have that size, and I would strongly think that Jon Jones may well be shooting for takedowns against Ciryl Gane, because you can't mess around. I know that Jones usually likes to beat people at their own game, but you can't mess around with Ciryl Gane like that, can you? Surely not. You'll end up on your back staring up at the lights. So I think Jon Jones may well go back to his wrestling pedigree, and he does have a wrestling pedigree as well. And if he gets it down to the ground, that could be a horrible night for Ciryl Gane. Because do you remember what Jones used to be able to do with his elbows? Ask Brandon Vera about Jones's elbows from guard. Ask Brandon Vera about that. Shattered orbital. Nasty stuff. UFC 100 that was, if I remember rightly. On the prelims. Either on the prelims or early on in the card. Either way, interested in that fight. The last thing I'm going to go through is there's UFC Troll of the Week. This one was sent to me by my mate. And I think it's okay. It's okay as a meme. It's not the best though, because basically it's a picture of Ciryl Gane. This guy said, when you go to make breakfast, but all of the picture of Ciryl Gane. So that's supposed to sound like cereal Gane, like cereals gone. I don't know. I think that's a stretch. I think that's a reach. Anyone else? Do you think that doesn't really work? I think it would work better if it said all of the eggs are, and then a picture of gone, like all of the eggs are gone. Because for me, if you're getting cereal, you're not making breakfast. That's not making breakfast. If you're saying, I'm going to go make breakfast, but all of the cereal is gone, that doesn't work. I'm going to get breakfast. That's grab some cereal, you know. But if you're making breakfast, you're cooking breakfast. There's some eggs involved in that. I think to make that better, you just put eggs are, and then the picture of, and when you go to make breakfast and all of the eggs are gone. That works. Not all of the cereal gone, because his name is Cyril. The Cyril gone? What? You were going to be making breakfast to eat with gone, and he's got it. Doesn't work. Doesn't play. Don't like it. Anyway. That's all I've got time for this week. Don't forget, we've got a really big fight this week. Glover Teixeira versus Jamal Hill. Really interested in that one. That's going to be a stupidly good main event. I don't think it's a brilliant matchup for Glover because Jamal Hill, he hits different, man. Don't forget, you've also got the rematch, Figueiredo versus Moreno. That's brilliant. Gilbert Burns against Magny. Brilliant. Murphy against Andrade. Brilliant. Paul Craig versus Johnny Walker. Brilliant. That is a sick main card, man. That is an absolutely sick main card. Mauricio Shogun Hua is back against Ihor Porteria. I think that is Shogun's last fight, so enjoy that while it lasts. Gregory Robocop Rodriguez, he's against Bruno Ferreira. That's what I love seeing Gregory Rodriguez fight. He's brilliant. Thiago Moises is back. That's fucking awesome. Shamil Abdul Rakhminov versus Jalton Almeida. Jalton Almeida is a pro. I can't wait to see more of him. Munir Aziz is back. He's the guy that pieced up Razak Al Hassan in the United Arab Emirates at Fight Island. Munir Aziz, he looked really good in that one. Cody Staman's fighting. Terence McKinnon's on the card. Wally Alves against Nicholas Dalby. That is a great fight for the prelims. No, that's a sick card. Absolutely brilliant card. I'm looking forward to doing some research, some of the fighters, breaking it down. I'm doing a breakdown, just a fight preview, casuals guide, whatever you want to call it, just so that you can know more about the fighters. But that'll be dropping later on in the week. Until then, keep those odds long and those bets terrible.